Hi there. My name is Jerry Walsh. I am a member of Dig Project, and I am here today to teach you a little bit about Tuvan throat singing. I've been studying Tuvan throat singing for a couple years. The two people who I have really picked their brains about it are Steve Scalar and Mikhail Kosmos, who's from Finland. Steve Scalar is from Minnesota. And as far as I know, Steve is more or less responsible for bringing Tuvan throat singing to the United States. So the first thing I want to talk about with Tuvan throat singing is that there's a lot of information on the internet, especially on YouTube, where people are demonstrating what they believe to be Tuvan throat singing, and they're creating various overtone sounds and harmonics, which sound really nice to some degree, but ultimately are in a completely different category than what Tuvan throat singing is. Tuvan throat singing is distinguished by its use of singing with the chest, which in Tuvan is called Xorekteer. In Western overtone singing, which is what 99.99% of YouTube videos portraying themselves as Tuvan throat singing are, you do not have the Xorekteer voice coming into effect. What you have more is a manipulation of the tongue and the cheeks and the lips, creating these various harmonic overtone sounds, which sound really great and are in and of themselves a part of Tuvan throat singing. They are not the actual essence of what Tuvan throat singing is. So they're part of it, but they wouldn't be the completion of it. All right. So the first step for developing our foundation for learning Tuvan throat singing and the three primary styles of it, Kargyraa, Khoomei, and Sygyt, is we need to develop our Xorekteer, which is singing with the chest. And the way we do that, the first step is we need to find the larynx. And the way we do that is we create a gentle bubbling sound in our throat like this. And then you take your hands when you're doing that and you feel where the vibration is at its strongest and where it's moving the most when you're saying ah, but with a bubbling sound, where you're gently constricting your vocal cords, almost as if you are gurgling salt water. And so wherever you feel the bubbling is the strongest, right around this area, is where your larynx is. And that bubbling sensation is actually your vocal cords fluctuating and moving. And so those are the muscles that we really need to learn to constrict. And the constriction of that is what's going to create this really interesting sound that we're going to have as a foundational building block for this overtone style of singing. So once we have the and we have found the bubbling, the next step is to stress the vocal cords gently, not to the point where we're hurting ourselves, but just flexing them to where we are changing our voice. So you would start with a simple ah, constrict it, and then you hear the change of your voice like so. Ah, ah. And so if you go back to the bubbling technique, I'm stressing the same part that is bubbling, and I'm just doing it over the ah, and I'm not doing anything with my tongue or my lips. I'm not speaking any vowels, making it sound differently. I'm just constricting. Ah. And so it sounds ah, and you really feel it in your chest. It feels like the vibration is coming through your whole body, and you really feel like you're enunciating from your chest. It's not just a part that's coming from your mouth or your lips. It's really coming from your whole body, and you derive a lot of power from it. So that's a very important key thing for Tuvan throat singing, is to have the chest being a primary element. Once we have the Xorekteer voice, we can then move on to developing the Khoomei voice, or Khoomei style of singing. And the primary way we do that is we are still constricting the vocal cords in the larynx by going ah, but we then change the shape of our mouth and the shape of our lips to create a resonant cavity, in the same way that if you were to pluck a guitar string, you need to have the opening in the back of the guitar for the sound to reverberate through. Otherwise, plucking the string in thin air, you wouldn't have the same richness and texture and quality to the sound. So the way we do that with our mouth is we go from ah, and then we bring our mouth forward and create a small opening with our lips. So, and it changes the sound like this. And so I'm still constricting my vocal cords. I'm not doing it to the point that it hurts. In fact, I'm actually really just in the same way that if you had a balloon and you pulled the neck of the balloon, it changes the sound because of the way the air is being released. It's not an intense stress or squeezing on the throat. It's a very gentle flexing of the vocal cords. And at the same time, we are bringing our jaw down, opening or narrowing our lips to a tiny hole like this. And that chamber, the resonant cavity, along with the constriction of the vocal cords, creates that sound. So it goes like this. And so the second thing you can do once you have that sound is you can add a harmonic over it, which is exactly what I was doing there. I was bringing the tongue forward and backwards, which creates that kind of pulsing sound where it's almost a whistle coming over the general drone of the overtone. So listen for it again here, and my hand will be the exterior representation of my tongue moving. And so just the movement of the tongue, in the same way if you were playing didgeridoo, creating that high overtone sound with the didge. Same thing that you have with throat singing. Sygyt is basically a manipulation, or rather an extension of Khoomei. We're using the tongue to change the resonant cavity, or the shape of your mouth, to filter out the sound in a different way, which creates that very high piercing whistle sound. So if this is the roof of your mouth, while you're in the process of singing Khoomei, you take your tongue, which is here, and you create a seal around your teeth and the inside of your kind of gums, on the inside of your teeth, while leaving a small chamber either on either side, or you can even do the middle. I find that you can generate the sound from any point, and it's just more or less what you're more comfortable with. But by creating that filter for a tiny part for the sound to come through in the resonant cavity, it creates this very high piercing whistle sound. So it's really important before we even try to do Sygyt, though, that we really master Khoomei. Because if we don't, then we're really just doing what's called Western overtone singing, where they go like this. And you get a nice overtone. Although I think that the difference between Western overtone singing, from what I can tell, and from Tuvan throat singing is that you get a lot of other sounds that aren't filtered out. With Tuvan throat singing, you can really isolate that very high piercing whistle sound, and especially when it's mic'd in the performance, it's indescribable and it's unlike anything else. But if you do Western overtone singing, where you're not activating the vocal cords through the Khoomei, then you really you lose the ability to stay with that high piercing sound, and you gotta get stuck with all these other sounds you can't filter out. So the key for Sygyt is to have a good Khoomei. That's the essence of the whole thing. So learn Khoomei first, then you can get to Sygyt. But just to demonstrate Sygyt and what it sounds like, here's an example. So I will start with Khoomei and then transition in kind of by dropping. For me, I tend to drop my jaw a little bit, kind of like this, and I bring my tongue up, and I just allow the sound to come through. And one thing that is best is the least amount of effort you can put into the stressing of your muscles and tension in your body, the more the sound's going to come out. This is even something that I am still working on. So and so also there you could tell that I was changing kind of the sound from the super high whistle to coming to a lower tone by opening and closing my mouth in a certain way. In order to learn the Kargyraa technique, which is the very low, like grumbling bass sound created by the ventricular folds of the throat, which are also in the larynx and are basically right on an extension more or less beyond the vocal cords. Kargyraa is the vibration of the ventricular folds on top of the vocal folds. So the way we do that is we start with our mouth closed to create more back pressure, and we want to clear our throat, and we want to kind of focus on the same spot where we had the bubbling of the larynx. So it's like this. And this is something you really just need to play around with and really practice, and I would advocate people figuring out on a spectrum how much they want to put stress and squeezing into their throat. When I first started this, I did it really, really strong, and it hurt a lot. I eventually was able to get a sound, and over time, about, I would say almost like 8 months it took me to really loosen up, and I found a much more comfortable place to squeeze and a much looser tension and still generate a really powerful sound, but there was no pain. So if you're doing it and it hurts, and you're getting the sound, it's good that you got the sound, but you need to loosen up and relax. It shouldn't hurt at all. Despite what it may sound like or what you may think, it shouldn't actually hurt. And so we want to start with clearing our throats. I usually go but I'm really squeezing right here and down. And you'll feel it. Once it activates, it just feels like your whole throat is vibrating and oscillating really cleanly. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like anything is stuck in your throat. It feels like the whole muscle system has been activated. And it can be a different experience for each person to find out how to make this muscle move. So I stress acting like you're clearing your throat, almost like you're coughing. Steve says like purring like a big cat. That kind of thing. And once you do feel you are starting to get a good vibration coming through, and you can kind of hear the sound change from a grumbling to a more clearing vibration like this, then you want to open your mouth. And so then you want to experiment with different vowels, and different vowel shapes of the mouth will change the sort of pitch and the way the Kargyraa sounds. So to demonstrate it all the way through. There's different levels to which you can vibrate your throat at. So I can do it even lower, like, although for me I find that to be more painful, so I generally do it at a higher level on my throat. So just figure out what works best for you, and remember not to hurt yourself practicing this technique. It should not hurt. There are a lot of words that I'm using in this video that are probably foreign to many people who are just getting started with Tuvan throat singing. And there's a lot of technicalities to all these techniques that might not be so obvious to people who are just learning this simply by watching these videos. So my intention with these videos is really for them to be an introduction and to give you some foundational understanding of what each technique is and how it's implemented. And I hope that with questions, people can email me and reach out to me, and hopefully we can start to work with people, because I really think the essence of learning these techniques is you need feedback, and you need to have somebody give you an understanding and kind of guide you through and listen to what you're doing. Myself, I had many instructions that were to the point, medical anatomy of what's happening, and reading it. Yet it wasn't until I had someone just listen to what I was doing, and they could immediately go, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, and then it clicked like that. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you learned something from this. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember to check out digproject.com and my own website, jerrywalshsound.com. And feel free to send us any information or questions or schedule a lesson. And we'll have many more lessons on throat singing and world music coming up. Thank you.